How you doing? Today, on a Pint with JG, I am going to talk about knackered, old salesmen. I'm in the Candle Bar, which is a local haunt and another favourite of Inward Revenue's, where I'm drinking a beer which is called Yeasty Boys, which is really not bad. When I first started my recruitment career, I didn't even have a computer on the desk. We had little paper cards in a tin box that you rang, and it would say Bill Smith, IBM, and you'd ring them. A lot has changed in that time. I think the thing that's changed the most since then has been the way people sell and the kind of salespeople. The guys I dealt with at the start of my career were tough, beer drinking, hard bitten, smoking, curry eating, alcoholic, fast car driving, uncaring sales animals. The people I dealt with at the start of my recruitment career were a throwback to the initial days of photocopier salesmanship. They quite literally epitomised the word, always be closing. They smoked fags, they drank lager, and they quoted Wall Street. The thing that always stuck in my mind about a lot of the guys I dealt with at the time was how knackered they all looked. I mean, they came from an era where you spent time in pubs entertaining clients, or on the golf course, or dare I say even lap dancing clubs. It was a different world then, where you could comfortably entertain a client and you weren't going to get into trouble for it. They were products of the 80s. They'd watched Wall Street. They remembered Thatcher's Britain. They knew what it was all about to be homeowners, to make money. Greed was good, and they behaved in that way. At the time, I was always told by the people that taught me to be a recruitment consultant that you should never ever deal with a candidate who was above the age of 48. It was like some kind of recruitment version of Logan's Run, where anybody over 48 died some kind of death of a salesman. It was just mental. No client in his right mind was going to pay a recruitment fee for a guy over the age of 48. I undertook some quite detailed analysis a while ago into the average age of salespeople that we dealt with. So I did some demographics, where they live, how old are they, average academic background and so on. What we actually started to find is that the average age of a candidate is getting older and older and older. In fact, I'd go as far as to say the biggest cluster of our highest fee levels are typically in the 50 plus age bracket. So the real question is, what's so different nowadays? Firstly, I think the culture of selling has changed. I think people are spending less time in bars or doing outrageous amounts of mileage, 70, 80,000 miles in their car. I mean, I remember at the time it was more tax efficient to do 80,000 miles in your car than it was to do 10,000 miles, and as a result I think people are spending less time in their cars and perhaps looking after themselves a little bit better. We're kind of a little bit more aware now of the fact that you've got to be healthy, you've got to be thin, you've got to be lean, you've got to be fit, you've got to go to the gym, you've got to be in good shape, you've got to look after yourself. So as a result, I think actually a lot of the people that we're dealing with now who are in the 50s are wearing a little bit better than the candidates I dealt with who were in the 50s in those days. So the way customers buy now has really changed, and I think that's a really contributory factor as to why salespeople are lasting longer in their careers. Everybody knows, and it's been well documented, that when we're going into large, complex sales processes now, one of the biggest challenges is that the customers are in 100% possession of a lot of the information before they ever engage with the sales professional. And as a result, I think it's changed the nature of the type of salesperson that those customers want to engage with. Predominantly they're looking for people who can bring a little bit more to the party, particularly in terms of consulting, advice, and a little bit of commercial acumen. And I think that's why perhaps books like The Challenger Sale have really been very popular, because the kind of people who are capable of perhaps providing that more of a challenger sale are those that have got a few more grey hairs and a few more years behind them, where that experience allows them to say things that will push and challenge a CIO or a CEO at some point in the sale. Employers are culturally a lot happier recruiting people who are much older nowadays, and we see that there's a lot less of a rejection culture in the kind of candidates that we go back to them with. The next thing is we have a greying economy. There isn't a day that goes by without us hearing more about pensions crisis and the average retirement age getting older and older. So it's good news for older salespeople. They're lasting longer, and life's getting a little bit easier if you're past what was then the Logan's Run halcyon age of 48. But it's not all perfect. When we interview candidates, our consultants are trained to ask them, what do you think think will be the next biggest problem you'll have finding your next role? I would say pretty much in every instance, any candidate over the age of 50 is always really, really worried about their age. And I'm here to tell you now, stop worrying. That's not your problem. That's the least of your problems. It couldn't be further away from your problems. The problem you should really be worrying about is that you suck. The problem that you should be worrying about the most is actually that you're not a very good salesman. And that's an amassed problem from a whole load of different areas. The fact that you haven't looked after your body, so you look terrible. The fact that, more importantly, and the thing we see the most in a lot of salespeople that get past a certain age, is they stopped managing their skill set and they stopped developing themselves. They stopped believing in the sweet science of salesmanship and relying too much on that little bit of old magic. And that's the bit that actually is the real problem for candidates as they start to get towards those slightly longer in the tooth years. They might have experience, but actually what we tend to find is the good ones are great and more than placeable, but if you're bad, you're bad. So the message and the point I really want to get across today in today's Pint with JG is, if you're good enough, you're young enough. But if you're bad enough, it doesn't matter what age you are. If you stop developing your skills, if you stop caring about how good you are, if you stop caring whether you're reading sales books at a weekend, if you stop caring whether you look right, how you feel, how you sell, how you're perceived, then you're going to suck and you're going to be hard to place. Well, and that's me from the Candle Bar on a very wet, dreary Tuesday afternoon. Thanks for staying and listening.